Hello, everyone. Tom Fox and Nick Gallo back for another episode. Nick, in this episode, I wanted to take up lesson number 3 from the FCPA Survival Guide, which is extensive remediation. In episode 2, we talked about extraordinary cooperation, but now let's talk about remediation, because this, to me, is something that every compliance professional needs to understand. I think it's in our wheelhouse. I think it's relatively simple, but it may not be easy. So we've got 3 great sets of examples from the 3 enforcement actions, ABB, Albemarle, and SAP. And I'd just like to go through those to start with and maybe get some of your thoughts. ABB made clear they recognized they had a problem. They were a 3-time recidivist, and they put together a data analytics program. They understood we have a culture problem that we have to change. They reorganized their sales teams and sales approaches. They restructured reporting, and they hired some of frankly, the best compliance professionals in the world to lead this effort, led by Natalia Shehadeh, who became the SVP and Chief Integrity Officer of the company. She'd been a Chief Compliance Officer, and she'd been part of an original compliance dream team that Billy Jacobson led to get Weatherford through their FCPA enforcement action in the first decade of this century. But the strategies that they used, are those things that you think companies really understand we have to do the extra mile? Or you've used the phrase check the box over several of these podcasts. Are we past check the box when companies are in an enforcement action?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's like a mentality. When I was in college, I recognized this difference of, am I trying to just get an A on the test, or am I trying to learn the material? Am I just studying for the test, or am I really trying to absorb the material? And I think those are slightly different things. And I think they lead to different outcomes. And you can kind of have a similar analogy for your health. Are you trying to not get in trouble with your doctor, or are you trying to just be healthy? And I think if you're authentically trying to get an A on the test, meaning you're trying to actually learn the information, or you're authentically trying to be healthy, and I'm not worried about, am I going to fit into the doctor's picture, but rather I'm doing the actual steps it's going to take for me to get healthy. Now I don't have to really worry so much, because whatever the doctor asks, I'm going to have an answer for that. I'm not just going to try to give him answers that he likes. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be some substance to the lifestyle change that I'm doing. And I think, kind of carrying this analogy forward a little bit, if we're talking about extensive remediation, just picture somebody who's had a triple bypass surgery, and their doctor's like, you need to make some real changes. Okay. One version of that guy, he just cuts out fast food and that's it. And the other version of the guy gets super healthy. He's walking every day, changes his whole diet, and so forth. That latter example is the extensive remediation. There's an actual change. There's an actual drive to fix the problem and fix the situation, not to appease somebody else, but rather to appease ourselves as professionals who understand our business, understand compliance, and understand how controls and processes work to drive more compliance, a more compliant organization.
Nick, we learned later, although it was not described in the DPA or DPA as thoroughly, they put in a first-class data analytics program. As we move to Albemarle and SAP, the DOJ specifically called out data analytics as a reason for the extraordinary remediation of both of those companies. And up until this time, we'd certainly heard about data analytics, and Matt Galvin was hired by the Department of Justice. But to me, the significance of the DOJ putting that in settlement documents was, hey guys, we've moved from cutting edge to best practices.
Right.
And then something becomes just standard.
What you do, right?
Table stakes. And I've seen the DOJ do that in several other areas. So I really wanted to get your thoughts on not simply data analytics, as I know you believe in that, but those conversations you're having with clients, and are they coming to you with questions of, what do we do? Where do we start? Do we start looking at vendor spend? What does it mean to have a data analytics program?
Yeah, I feel like I keep saying the same answer. Like, a data analytics program that's going to work is going to stem from a scientific mentality, I think. Like, we are, I don't know. I mean, there's data points that can either be lagging indicators or leading indicators, and those exist within our organization, either in their sort of nascent pure state by themselves or in combination with two things. An example, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but if, for example, let's think about investigations, like you can see the health of your speak up program, not just by looking at your reporting rate, but looking at your reporting rate in concert with your anonymous rate, right? Looking at those two together, looking at those ratios and how those change across categories or regions can give you clues on where you need to look. And so I think I said this recently, but like your data analytics is not the end point. It's the start of something. And it's the start of an investigation or an experiment to see, is this an actual indicator of something? Like when the check engine light goes on your car, that's either due to something real or due to something not real. It's something to look at and something to respond to and investigate. And so I think it's easy to get overwhelmed by the data analytics thing. A data analytics program seems very overwhelming. But what I've seen throughout my life, and even before I got into compliance, is that, I'll give you an example. There's a guy on our board, and this guy came from like consulting. I think he worked at Bain or something. And the guy just has this knack of getting to the answer very quickly. And he can get kind of 80% accurate with a couple of different numbers. Do you understand what I'm saying? He doesn't need to do this massive analysis because you can usually get some kind of an 80% accurate indication of a problem or of a confirmation of your hypothesis from basic numbers that you have. And so we're in this era right now where there's data lakes everywhere. There's tools. We have 20 different tools for everything, and each one has registers that we can download. There's all these data points, and it's easy to get lost in the avalanche of data, and we kind of forget to spit and find which way is up. That's the trick for avalanches, or so I hear. But I think it's just starting small. I think it starts from a continuous improvement mentality. Okay, there's more. We have not reached perfection, and while I'll never reach it, that's a noble pursuit. We need to just keep getting better. And then it's coupled with this sort of scientific mind of looking for opportunities to improve by considering easy data points. Because again, I can go kind of on and on about how easy it is to get lost in the weeds in this data analytics kind of conversation. But again, I just think starting easy, starting with what you have and looking for either changes in a trend, that's an easy data analytics place to start, or surprising moves in a particular number are usually indications on where to start. So that's what I would tell people to look at. What are some high level numbers you can look at and look at your kind of like risk assessment. Where are our biggest risk areas, or just your kind of real-time risk assessment? And then look for some high level indicators of a hypothesis, right? Like the true scientific process is falsifying the null hypothesis. That's what we're trying to do. So that's what we need to do with respect to an inkling we might have, or a concern we have, or a hypothesis we have about improvement or something going wrong.
Nick, there was another step both Albemarle and SAP took that I wanted to get your thoughts on, and that was on the change in their way of doing business or their business model.
Right.
This was the first time we had seen these called out. I don't know if this is going to be a trend going forward. I have gone through one of these changes, so I understand what it means, but I'm going to read from both settlement documents. So for Albemarle, they implemented a go-to-market strategy that resulted in the elimination of the use of sales agents throughout the company, terminating hundreds of third-party sales representatives, distributors, resellers, and moved to a direct sales model.
Yep.
With SAP, they eliminated third-party sales commissions model globally and prohibited sales commissions for public sector contract in high-risk markets and enhanced compliance monitoring. I just wanted to explore with you. I don't know if you've ever had to go through that. It's a great, and let me preface it with one more thing. The former chief compliance officer at Baker Hughes, who had to make that change at Baker Hughes, once again, about 08 or 09, so quite some time ago, he said that the argument he used with the business guys was, you don't want anyone between you and the customer.
Smart.
You want to have a direct relationship with the customer. And so it's in your interest not to have a third party. Even if you think they're making an introduction, or even if you think they're facilitating something and it's all above board, you still don't have that relationship. And he said when he made that argument, the business guys immediately got it. So I was wondering if you could say a few words about that approach to sales and why you can not ever eliminate risk, but you can lessen risks by moving away from that type of sales approach to a direct sales model of your own employees.
It's the thing that restaurants ran into with DoorDash, right? Like the dining experience, when you introduce a new player or stakeholder in the delivery of the meal, changes the dining experience significantly. Eliminating those third parties just gives you more control over the value chain in terms of delivering stuff to the client. It's a smart argument that they made. That's a really smart argument. Smart that it resonated and he was able to get the buy-in. There's probably a dozen arguments you can make. That one is fine in and of itself. And there is just always inherent risk when you have multiple cultures or multiple companies delivering the service. I just got to say though, I mean, you want to talk about like a conveyance of, think of the message that sends to the DOJ. Okay, you know what? This ain't working. So we're going to just totally change our entire business model. That's not a check the box thing. That's not painting over something. I mean, that's raising the business and building it back up. You know what I mean? It's a very substantial thing. It took a ton of work, ton of risk to even do it. A lot of risk on what that would actually mean for the business, because that's not like a smooth sailing thing. That company's going to go down a little bit during that, right? There's volatility in the performance as a result of that. But to demonstrate tangibly that our commitment to stamping out corruption is bigger than and more important than any sort of short-term volatility, I just think it sends a really strong, authentic message to the DOJ. And it gets back to what I was saying about the heart attack. You know what I'm saying? It's, if I was drinking beers every night and I love beer and I have a heart attack, it's a very clear message that I deliver to the doctor when I say, yeah, I quit drinking. He's like, wow, this guy is in. He's bought into his recovery plan or whatever.
One of the things that interested me about this approach was, in many ways, the DOJ formulates their expectations based upon what companies bring to them, meaning Albemarle was the first company in a reported resolution that said they changed their sales model. Although I know other companies that had done it, it was not reported. SAP immediately thereafter also reports that. Well, the DOJ sees this work a couple of times and they begin to think maybe we ought to suggest people do this. Now, your own direct sales force has its own inherent risks.
100%.
But those are risks that I think are relatively well known, and I think they're manageable, meaning you can put a risk management strategy in place. What I want people to understand from this podcast is when we say extraordinary remediation, it's not extraordinary to change your business model. It may take a lot of work and be difficult to do, but the DOJ may view it as extraordinary, and you're only limited by your imagination, so that you can bring things that are well known in the marketplace and try them and get credit for them. And that's what the DOJ, I think, when they say they want extraordinary remediation, that's one of the things they want.
I don't think you're saying that in order for your remediation to be deemed extraordinary, that you necessarily have to change your sales model. That's not what you're saying.
No.
But
no, I'm saying you can.
An example of something that is extensive and that can indicate that the remediation is genuine, authentic, and extensive. I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I can't wait to see what we come up with next time, Nick.
Yeah, me too, man. Let's keep it going.